Welcome to Inclusion Revolution here on Eastlink TV. We're so glad you could join us this week. As you know, Inclusion Revolution is dedicated to the inclusion of persons with all types of disabilities in our community. And as part of that mandate, we always like to find interesting and creative projects that are happening in our community and beyond that really exemplify the best practices and supports of persons with disabilities, especially in the area of including them in our community. After all, Inclusion Revolution is all about equalizing the playing field. And as part of that, we're really excited to welcome Meredith Copp here today. Hi, Meredith.
Hi, Tova.
And Meredith is joining us because her group, the For Youth group, has developed not only a book, a children's book, which we talked a little bit about last season, but it's now evolved into a book, a game, and so much more. So we asked Meredith to come by and tell us all about the project because we really believe it's a great example of best practices in support of persons with disabilities and in support of educating our whole community. So Meredith, tell me a little bit about where we've been since the book was originally published last year.
Sure. The book, The Fountain of Harmony, was really well received in the community, and the first copies we had printed were gone very quickly. So we've since reprinted, and it's kind of taken on its own entity. The next group that came into the program decided that the book was so great that they wanted to build upon that tool, and they've developed the board game, which we've brought with us today. The board game incorporates all of the different characters from the book with trivia questions and action cards, and it's basically a fun educational board game that children can use to learn a little bit more about disability while having fun with it.
Right. Now, I know you brought a book.
I did.
If you don't mind, just to remind everybody, I'm going to grab it from you. Thank you. What I really love, quite frankly, about this book is really the incredible illustrations. And if I may, I'm just going to maybe flip open to some of the characters. Mm-hmm. And I'm also interested in the characters themselves, because I know that each character is actually based on one of the youth who developed and worked on this book. Right. So if I may ask you, and I'm going to try to flip to a page that kind of helps us do that. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about some of the characters. I know in the book, which I thought was really helpful, there's a little area where you actually get an information about each character, which I thought was really, really helpful. Can you tell me, while I'm trying to find that, what's the target group for this book?
The target is age 8 and up. Anybody, really, can enjoy the book. It's not specifically for any individuals, but incorporates all sorts of different aspects of children. For example, this fella here is Alec the bookworm, and he is living with schizophrenia. And he's really interested in books and loves being outside. And he starts the book on his journey to the Fountain of Harmony.
And then I see our little Alex the bookworm then goes on to meet what looks
Pearl,
to me like a pink monkey.
A pink monkey,
just checking.
And she has a hearing impairment. And on that page you can see she's been bullied throughout her childhood.
So these are some of the people in her community are bullying.
Right,
So
exactly.
what I'm understanding is that each one of these characters lives with a disability, as did the youth that experienced it.
Absolutely.
And their goal in writing this story was really to talk about the fact that they were bullied or made fun of for being different, whereas we embrace difference as being something wonderful and what makes the world go round. Sometimes people and kids don't get that. So this is really about them finding, or that Fountain of Harmony being the kind of their place where they fit in and they don't have to worry about it. And one of the things I thought was really interesting about the book, quite frankly, and really drew me, was the fact that at the end they don't all just go back home and everybody lives happily ever after. But your youth group actually wrote it that they stayed at this harmony, and I hope I'm not blowing the end, but I think that, you know, the point is the story itself and how beautiful it is. But the concept that they didn't just run back and change the world, but they found a peaceful place of acceptance, and that was enough.
And their acceptance came from within.
And that's super important.
Yeah.
So can you also tell me a little bit about, I was really interested in the sloth, because I have to tell you, why a sloth?
The sloth has ADD, and he sometimes has gummy worms that kind of speed him up. His mind doesn't work as fast as his body, and
Because that's the opposite of a sloth, right?
Right, exactly.
Their bodies are a little bit slower, but that doesn't mean that their minds are, whereas I guess this young man feels the opposite.
Exactly.
It takes a little longer to think about it, but he moves quickly, which would be sort of the antithesis of, or the opposite, of a sloth. So that's kind of interesting. So these characters are going along, and what's really neat is, at the end of the story, as you mentioned, they have this opportunity to find acceptance from within. So then this next group comes along, because that's really what we're here to talk about today.
Right. Yeah.
And this next group decides, we love the book, but we think that we can even take it to another place around both education and fun, because isn't that what this project was all about?
Exactly. They wanted to outreach into the community to spread the word about special versus equal.
Can you tell me what you mean about that? I'm sorry. I know I say it all the time, but not everyone hears me.
Yes.
So what do you mean by equal versus special?
Equal versus special meaning that... sorry.
That's okay. I know what you're coming from. You're just trying to find the right example. What about a person who uses a wheelchair? Let's use that as an example.
So it's not special for the person with the wheelchair to get into the building by a ramp. It's equal for them to be able to get into the same building using a ramp.
Right, so your message...
having the ramp isn't a special thing. It's an accommodation to make the playing field.
And you and I both know in the community as a whole, across Canada, really, the message is that people presume accommodation, or in this case the ramp, would be considered special, whereas you and I would consider it equal because we should both be able to get into that building.
Exactly.
So that's sort of where you're coming from on equal versus special, or equalizing the playing field.
Exactly, and this group of youth really realizes that and wanted to make an impact in our community, to make that known, right, and to impact how our community feels about disability.
Now, before we show the game and talk a little bit about that and where it's going, I want to ask you about the youth involved themselves.
Yeah.
What has happened to them differently as a result of a project that is a little bit outside the usual, if you know what I mean? Can you talk to me about the youth themselves? I mean, yes, they put this extraordinary piece together, and of course, I'm sure there's a lot of pride with that.
Absolutely.
But where do they go with that? Then what? You've done the book, you feel pride, and then that group moves on, and then the next group might do something. Tell me about the youth themselves and how they've been impacted in these projects, within this project.
Their confidence has grown amazingly as a result of the For Youth program and working on these particular projects. Having the publicity, having the community recognize that they've done such great work on this has helped to build their confidence, to help them move on to anything else that they're looking to do. For example, we have 2 people that we're still in contact with most of them, but we're still working with a couple of them to bring the book and the game further. So one person doing the illustrations from the book will also be involved in kind of as we take this further, and one of the folks that helped develop the game is still involved in what we're doing next.
Right, and so really what I'm hearing is that we get confidence for the kids themselves, obviously the pride of a product that's not only out there but really out there, because I know that you've had a tremendous demand on the books themselves. How are you promoting the books, if you don't mind me asking? Because before we move on to the game, where are we at with these books? If somebody really would like to know more about it, or actually have a chance to purchase one if they care to, can you, just before we move on to the game, can you tell me a little bit about how do you get the book? And I'll ask you how much, because I'm one of those people that always likes to know, and I'm sure our viewers would also like to know.
Sure. The book is $14.95 plus HST, and is available through reachAbility. So anyone who's interested in finding out more information or purchasing a book can contact me at reachAbility. So it's Meredith at reachAbility.org, or the phone number is 429-5878.
Okay, so for anyone who's interested in finding out more about the book, they can email Meredith at reachability.org. They can call reachAbility at 902-429-5878, which is in Halifax, and find out more about that.
Right.
Now, before we take a short break, I want to ask you one more question, and then we'll come back and really roll the game out.
Okay.
What's going on with the book today? Okay, you talked about a printing and it going somewhere. Has there been any other attempts to take it to another place, if you know what I mean?
It's been well recepted, and we've taken it to the next level. We've been speaking with the Department of Education in Nova Scotia as well, and they've approved the book to be used in the school system.
As a resource.
As a resource, yeah.
Right, so in fact what you're telling me is that in Nova Scotia, that any teacher who is interested in getting this book for their classroom, and we'll talk more about the game, and hopefully they'll want both.
Right.
The reality is that the Department of Education Nova Scotia is listing it, or is in the process of listing it, at the price mentioned, $14.95, and that way for teachers and educators who are interested, it's now considered to be an approved resource. Thank you. I'm not good with the language of that. So I'd like to do is to ask you to give us just another minute. We'll take a quick break here on Inclusion Revolution, and when we come back, I'm very excited to hear about the next step in the evolution of the Fountain of Harmony, which I understand to be a board game.
It is.
Okay, we'll be right back with Meredith Copp from reachAbility to talk more about the Fountain of Harmony. I hope you stick around.